It was supposed to be just another Monday. The power had gone out at the warehouse around 9:30 a.m., some issue with a transformer, according to my supervisor. One of those freak outages where the backup generators didn't kick in and everyone got sent home early. A rare blessing, honestly. I hadn't had a weekday afternoon to myself in months. On the drive back, I thought about surprising Elisa. We used to do that kind of thing all the time, little lunches, unplanned coffee runs, an afternoon movie just because we could. It had been a while. Too long, maybe? I pulled into the driveway around 10 past 10, my boots still dusty from the morning shift. Everything looked normal, quiet street, sun barely breaking through the clouds, no packages on the porch. But the moment I stepped inside, something in my gut twisted. The air smelled off, not bad, just different. Like someone had sprayed perfume to cover another scent. A floral note lingered, sweet but unfamiliar, layered over something earthy like expensive cologne. Not mine. Not hers either. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and turned to find 2 wine glasses on the narrow hallway table. That was the first real sign. One glass had a faint smear of red lipstick. The other had foggy fingerprints near the stem, like someone had gripped it nervously. Neither glass was from our regular rotation. They were the fancy ones, crystal with long stems that Elisa insisted we save for special nights. But it wasn't the glasses themselves that caught me. It was the placement. They weren't in the kitchen, where wine glasses normally lived. They weren't even on the living room side table where we'd occasionally set drinks if we were watching a movie. No, these were in the hallway. Almost like someone meant to hide them and then got interrupted. I moved deeper into the house quietly, like I was walking into a conversation I wasn't invited to. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it the rest of the way and stood there, taking in the mess. The bed was unmade, but not in the usual way. The blanket was bunched toward the foot like it had been yanked off in a hurry. One of the pillows had lipstick stains, a deep red. Again, not Elisa's color. She wore a soft coral most days. Maybe pink when she was feeling bold. But this was dramatic. Statement lipstick. And the window opened just an inch, letting in a cool breeze that didn't match the thermostat setting. It was 48 degrees outside, damp with the kind of moisture that clung to your skin. We never left windows open in that kind of weather. Not since last winter's heating bill. That's when I heard it. A car door slamming shut. I moved quickly to the front window, gently pulling down the slat in the blinds. A dark sedan idled at the curb for just a moment before driving off. Tinted windows. No plates on the front. I couldn't make out the driver. But something about the way the car lingered, just long enough to see if the coast was clear, set my nerves buzzing. I was still watching the road when I heard the bathroom door creak open behind me. Jacob? Her voice was soft, but it carried a current of tension beneath the surface. I turned slowly to see Elisa standing in the hallway wrapped in a towel with damp hair clinging to her neck. Her cheeks were flushed, not with makeup, but with heat. Or maybe guilt. She smiled when our eyes met, but it didn't reach the corners of her mouth. "What are you doing home?" she asked, carefully casual. Her gaze lingered on my face like she was trying to read my expression before I had time to form one. "Power's out at the site," I said. "They sent everyone home." She nodded slowly, stepping into the living room with bare feet. "That's weird." I didn't hear anything about an outage. I didn't respond. My eyes flicked to her wrist. She was fidgeting, brushing her damp hair behind her ears when I saw it. A plain black hair tie wrapped twice around her right wrist. It was mine. Well, not mine exactly. It was the one I kept looped around the zipper of my work backpack. I had noticed it there this morning when I grabbed my lunch. Elisa never wore those plain ties. She preferred the fabric kind with patterns or the ones with little gold clasps. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her wear something that basic. She caught me looking. Her hand dropped instantly, then slid behind her back like she was trying to pretend she hadn't just caught herself in the act. "Oh," she said quickly, her voice rising a notch too high. "I borrowed this from your bag. I couldn't find any of mine and my hair was a mess." She laughed a little too hard and moved past me toward the kitchen. "I had Morgan over." "From yoga? You remember Morgan?" "Didn't realize Morgan wore lipstick now," I said before I could stop myself. She froze for a second. It was subtle, but I saw it. "Yeah," she said without turning around. "She's trying out a new look. We had a little wine, caught up. Girl stuff." I didn't say anything. She busied herself with the sink, rinsing a mug that didn't need rinsing. "You said you weren't feeling well this morning," I said slowly. "I felt better after a shower." Her voice was steady now, like she'd found her footing. I walked back toward the hallway past the wine glasses. "Was it red or white?" I asked. She didn't respond right away. I could almost hear her calculating. "Red," she said. "Pinot." I opened the bottle we got from the trip to Sonoma. I turned the glasses slightly. One had a faint, dark ring at the bottom. The other was completely dry. You poured 2 glasses? Yeah, of course. Only one of them's been used. She laughed again, that same forced chuckle. Morgan didn't stay long. Got called into work. I just left the second glass out. Didn't feel like cleaning up yet. I nodded slowly, then walked past her toward the bedroom again. You sure that's Morgan's lipstick? I asked, stopping at the doorframe. She didn't answer right away. When I looked back, she was staring at the floor, twisting the hair tie around her wrist. I think I'm going to take a nap, she said quietly. And just like that, the conversation was over. But something had changed. There were too many little things, too many dots I hadn't connected until now. I didn't say anything more. I just stood there for a few seconds, staring at that window again. The open one. The one I hadn't opened. The one I hadn't even noticed being open this morning. I turned and walked out, the creak of the floorboard under my feet echoing through the hallway. Something was wrong. And I wasn't ready to pretend otherwise. After that morning, something in me shifted. I didn't say anything to Elisa, not about the wine glasses, the lipstick, or the car I saw pulling away. I told myself I needed time. But really, I think I was afraid. Afraid that naming it out loud would make it real. That if I asked the right question, I might get the answer I already knew. Instead, I watched. At first, I chalked up my unease to paranoia. A bad day. A fluke. But as the days went on, I began to notice things I'd ignored before. Moments that seemed harmless at the time started to feel like warning signs I'd missed. Like how Elisa only wore perfume at night now. She used to spritz it on in the morning before work, habit, she called it. But for the last few weeks, it had become an evening thing. Light dabs behind the ears right before I got home, the scent fresh in the air when I kissed her hello. Or how she stopped asking when I'd be home. For years, she'd text mid-afternoon, checking in, still on schedule? Should I start dinner? Want takeout? Those messages had quietly stopped. I didn't notice the absence at first, only the silence that replaced them. Then there were the phone calls. She'd always been on her phone a lot, texts, social media, catching up with friends. That wasn't new. What was new were the sudden ends to calls when I walked into the room. Her screen would go dark. Her smile would tighten. She'd glance up like she was surprised to see me, even though it was the same time I came home every night. One evening, she was in the kitchen with her tablet open on the counter. I walked in and she flinched. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. She quickly slid the tablet shut and asked if I wanted pasta or stir-fry. I said pasta. She made stir-fry. I didn't say anything about it, but later that night, I checked the Bluetooth history on our shared speaker. She'd forgotten to clear it, and there it was, M's SUV. Not Morgan's phone or iPad or anything logical, just that. A connection listed from 3 days earlier. The same day she'd told me she was out running errands alone. At the time, I convinced myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe Morgan had driven her somewhere. Maybe it was innocent. But that explanation felt like a coat 2 sizes too small, tight, and unconvincing. It got harder to sleep. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling while Elisa snored beside me, my mind playing back conversations in reverse. Things she'd said that now felt rehearsed. Answers that had come too quickly. Her new obsession with watching mystery dramas, the kind with double lives and missing spouses and trail of clues plotlines. She used to hate that stuff. Said it gave her nightmares. Now she watched them with interest, making little comments like, "You'd be surprised how easy it is to hide things from people." She'd say it with a laugh. I stopped laughing. Our dinners became quieter. We sat across from each other like co-workers on the last day of a failing project. There was no fighting, just this cold civility, like we were both waiting for something to crack. One night I came home to find her in the backyard, pacing. She was on the phone, speaking low and fast. I caught the words, "That won't work," and "He'll notice," followed by a sharp, "I'll call you back," the second she saw me in the doorway. "Who was that?" I asked. She smiled. Too quickly. "Just Morgan again. She's having a crisis. Her new dog keeps chewing the baseboards." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But that night, I noticed she had no missed calls or outgoing logs to Morgan's number. Nothing at all for the last 2 days. I started keeping mental tabs. The times she went out didn't match up with the errands she claimed to be running. She'd come back from a quick Target run with nothing but a bottle of sparkling water and a vague excuse about long lines. One night, she said she was at yoga, but her mat was still in the hallway closet. Another evening, she said she was meeting coworkers at a cafe across town. I drove by the cafe. It was closed for renovations. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. Then, one rainy Thursday, she slipped. She was coming back from the grocery store, at least, that's what she said. But when she walked in, she didn't have any bags. Just her purse and a look that said she'd rather be anywhere else. Didn't find what I needed, she said quickly. They were out of everything. Including food? I asked. She didn't answer. That night, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. It wasn't from the grocery store. It was from a boutique hotel 10 minutes from our house. She'd paid for valet parking. No room charge. Just valet. The time on the receipt matched the hour she was supposedly hunting for produce. I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time, turning that slip of paper over in my hands. Still, I said nothing. Because as much as I didn't want to know the truth, I needed to be certain. I needed more than inconsistencies and lipstick on a wine glass. I needed something that couldn't be talked around or explained away with a charming smile and a story about Morgan. And then it happened. We were watching TV one night and she leaned against my shoulder like everything was fine. A rerun of some sitcom played in the background. The laugh track rolled. And she said it again. That same phrase she'd been repeating more and more lately. If anything ever happened to us, she said softly, I hope we'd still be kind to each other. She said it like a joke. A hypothetical. But this was the 4th time in 2 weeks. The first time, I'd smiled and nodded. The second time, I asked if everything was okay. She said yes, just being philosophical. The third time, I let it slide. But now I heard it for what it really was, a warning. She was laying the groundwork. Preparing me. Like a magician guiding your eyes to the wrong side of the stage so you wouldn't notice the trapdoor opening behind you. Elisa wasn't just being distant. She was pulling away. Carefully. Intentionally. And I was no longer sure she'd stop. By Saturday morning, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. It was cold out, one of those early spring mornings where the sun's out but the chill still cuts through your jacket. Elisa had gone to meet a friend for coffee and errands, her words, not mine. I didn't ask who or where. I just nodded and watched her leave, trying not to let my face show what I was feeling. I turned my attention to the storage closet in the hallway, the one we kept meaning to clean but never did. It was a war zone of holiday decorations, forgotten sports gear, and boxes labeled with old Sharpie, cables, winter stuff, miscellaneous. I needed to do something with my hands, something that didn't involve staring at her phone log or checking hotel receipts like some detective in denial. But it didn't take long for the distraction to turn into something else. Tucked behind a stack of unopened Amazon boxes was a small, dusty envelope. At first, I didn't think anything of it, figured it was some lost bill or holiday card. But when I flipped it over, I saw the logo of a jewelry store I recognized. It was high-end, the kind of place with velvet lighting and white-gloved salespeople. The name on the envelope made my stomach twist. Inside was an invoice. 2 rings. 1 men's, 1 women's. Paid in full. The date? 2 weeks ago. The size on the men's ring? Definitely not mine. I read the name on the order again. It wasn't Elisa's. It was a man's name, first initial M, last name Porter. Michael Porter. The address listed for delivery wasn't ours. But I recognized it. It was the same neighborhood where Elisa had attended a girls' gathering last weekend. She'd come home flushed and giddy, said she'd lost track of time. I'd believed her. Until now. I sat on the floor with the invoice in my hand, every nerve in my body buzzing. This wasn't lipstick or suspicion. This wasn't a hunch or a slip of the tongue. This was purchase history. This was commitment. This was proof. I wasn't paranoid. I was a target. I was a placeholder. The betrayal wasn't emotional anymore, it was practical. She was planning something. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the invoice. The sun shifted across the living room floor, and I just sat. At some point, I found myself wandering into her office. Our shared workspace where we kept the printer, the tax files, her tablet. She'd left it charging overnight, open on the desk. Normally, she closed everything out. She was neat like that. But not this time. There, plain as day, was a browser window still open. A hotel booking confirmation. My eyes scanned the screen. Check-in date, next Friday. 2 nights. Executive suite. Hotel near the airport. The reservation wasn't under Elisa's name. It was under Michael Porter. Same name as the ring receipt. Same address. The pieces clicked into place like a cruel jigsaw puzzle. She wasn't just seeing someone else. She was planning a getaway. The rings. The hotel. The quiet, emotional exit strategy. It was all happening right in front of me, and she'd stopped even trying to hide it. I think that's what hit me hardest. That she didn't think I'd notice. Or worse, that she thought I'd notice and still wouldn't do anything about it. She thought I was that passive, that broken down. And for a while she was right. I didn't confront her. I didn't call or text or throw her things in the driveway. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just moved. I went into our bedroom, pulled a small suitcase from under the bed, and began to pack. Essentials only, a few changes of clothes, my passport, the external hard drive with my work files. I grabbed my birth certificate from the fireproof box and the envelope of emergency cash we kept for hurricanes and blizzards. Then I logged into our shared accounts and began closing them. Bank accounts, streaming services, our joint Amazon Prime. I changed the routing on my paycheck to a new bank account I'd opened online months ago, back when things first started to feel strange. I hadn't used it for anything until now. By mid-afternoon, I had everything I needed. I left the envelope on the kitchen table, the jewelry receipt inside, along with a sticky note that simply said, "You were right. I noticed nothing. Until now." Then I walked out of that house like it was burning behind me. I didn't know where I was going exactly. Just not there. I ended up at a long-stay rental on the edge of the city. A small unit with creaky floors and a window that looked out at a dumpster, but it was clean and quiet. I paid in cash. Used a name I hadn't used since high school. My middle name, one nobody ever calls me by, just in case. I didn't want to be found. Not yet. The first night alone I didn't sleep. Not out of grief. Out of clarity. I saw it all now. The way she moved, how carefully she'd carved me out of her plans. She had built a new life under our shared roof and hadn't even blinked while doing it. And now that I was gone, I wondered if she'd even notice right away, or if she'd just think the house felt lighter. The next day, I bought a prepaid phone and logged into a throwaway email I hadn't used in years. It wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about starting over. No more guessing games. No more trapdoors. I was out. But Elisa wasn't done. Not yet. 3 days after I left, a package arrived at the rental's front desk. No return address, just my full name, first, middle, and last. The same name I'd used to check in. Inside was a manila envelope. It was a lease agreement. Brand new. Formal. Signed and dated. Tenant. Elisa Kendall. Co-signer and landlord. Michael Porter. Same man. Same name. Different life. She hadn't just moved on. She'd moved in. I didn't reach out. Not when the lease papers arrived. Not when I saw her signature next to his. Not when I realized that within days of my exit, Elisa had already slotted herself into another man's life like it was the final step in a checklist. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need to yell or curse her out. I didn't want answers. The answers were already there, in the quiet details she thought I wouldn't notice. The hair tie, the wine glasses, the receipts, the tablet she forgot to close. Each clue, innocent on its own, but damning when strung together. She hadn't stumbled into betrayal. She planned it. That was the part one couldn't shake. Not the cheating itself, though that was its own kind of poison, but the strategy behind it. The clean exits. The way she softened me with vague kindness, floated little what-if lines like, "If anything ever happened to us," while she was already preparing for a future that didn't include me. There was no note in the package she sent. Just the lease signed in pen. Proof of replacement. He had a house. He had space. And now he had her. But even that didn't twist the knife like I thought it would. It was the speed. The efficiency. The way I'd gone from husband to placeholder to afterthought in a matter of days. I took the envelope, folded it in half, and slid it into a drawer next to my passport. Not because I needed a reminder, but because part of me still couldn't believe it had happened this cleanly. No confrontation. No screaming match. Just a soft exit on my end and a seamless swap on hers. I had become disposable. But if she expected silence to mean surrender, she was wrong. I wasn't going to grovel. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. She'd chosen her path. I was choosing mine. That Monday, I drove out to a bank just outside of Seattle and opened a safety deposit box. I filled it with copies of my ID, a copy of our marriage certificate, the lease she signed with Michael, and the original jewelry invoice. Just in case. Because I didn't know what was coming next. But I wasn't going to be blindsided again. I changed all my passwords, including the obscure ones tied to old subscriptions and recovery accounts. I wiped the backup drive I'd left at the house and started fresh on a new one. I even swapped my usual driving route to work, cutting across side streets and back roads, not because I thought she was following me, but because the idea of being predictable now felt dangerous. I had lived my life trusting patterns. Now I was done with patterns. I moved through each day like a man rebuilding from a controlled demolition. Quiet, focused, aware of how easily things could fall again. And through it all, she didn't call. No missed calls. No blocked numbers. Not even a vague, just checking in text. Nothing. It was almost impressive how quickly she vanished. If I didn't know better, I'd have believed she never existed. One night, maybe 2 weeks after I left, I was walking home from a late shift. It was dark, early spring dark, where the wind stings and the shadows stretch long under street lamps. I turned the corner near my building and froze. A car I didn't recognize was parked across the street. Not running. Just sitting there. Lights off. Windows up. I kept walking. The next morning, it was gone. I told myself it was probably a neighbor's guest or a Lyft driver taking a break. I had no evidence it was anything else. But the feeling stayed. That week, it happened again. Different car. Same spot. Same timing. I waited at the window that night. Nothing happened. No knock. No call. Just headlights flipping on around midnight, followed by the quiet pull away of tires on wet pavement. Still, I said nothing. But the next day, I changed the locks. The property manager didn't ask why. I didn't offer an explanation. A few days later, I was digging through a drawer for a spare charger when I found the old work laptop Elisa had used last winter. She'd asked to borrow it, said she needed access to her files while her own was in for repairs. At the time, it hadn't seemed like a big deal. She worked in data analysis, mostly supply chain logistics. Nothing sensitive, nothing secret. At least, that's what I thought. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, got the better of me. I powered it on. It was slow, but still functional. I connected it to the network and checked for any remaining files. Most of it was empty. Cleaned. But the downloads folder hadn't been cleared. Buried under layers of temporary files and spreadsheets were 2 folders I didn't recognize. One labeled Q3_port review and another named contracts_xfer. Inside them were files I didn't understand, massive CSV logs, some PDFs marked internal use only, and a few email chains with external senders I didn't recognize. One name jumped out. Michael Porter. The same Michael from the lease. From the jewelry receipt. From the hotel booking. I opened one of the emails. The contents made my stomach flip. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was part of something else. The emails referenced shipments, inventory numbers, contract transitions. All under non-disclosure flags. And worse, my name was on one of them. An attachment listed me as a signatory. A scanned copy of a document I didn't remember signing. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall. What had she done? Was this more than betrayal? I pulled the external hard drive from my drawer, the one I'd saved everything onto before I left, and began copying the files. My fingers trembled as the progress bar inched forward. She hadn't just replaced me. She'd used me. My name. My laptop. My credentials. And now, I didn't know how deep it went, but I knew I was in something far worse than heartbreak. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. It started small. A car idling too long across the street. A man with a hood pulled up lingering near the mailbox cluster. Once, I swore I saw the same guy standing outside the corner store 2 blocks from my apartment. Same ratty windbreaker, same posture, just staring blankly ahead like he was waiting for a bus that never came. At first, I told myself it was paranoia. After everything with Elisa, after the betrayal and the lies and the hotel bookings under someone else's name, it made sense that I'd be jumpy. But then I found the scratch marks on my door lock. They were faint, like someone had tried a key that didn't quite fit. No break-in. No damage to the frame. Just tiny metal scrapes where there shouldn't have been any. I called the landlord. He brushed it off. Probably a previous tenant's key, he said. Sometimes people forget to turn in their spares. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was nothing. But that night, I slept with the light on. 3 days later, I caught a man following me as I left work. I didn't see him at first, just caught a reflection in the glass doors of a bakery. A guy in a gray beanie, walking slow, always the same distance behind me no matter how fast or slow I went. I ducked into a hardware store and waited. He walked past without even glancing in. But I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Not a smile. Something tighter. That's when I remembered the old work laptop. The files. The emails. Michael Porter. I hadn't touched the laptop since I copied everything to the external drive. It sat in a locked drawer in my apartment now under a pile of legal pads and bank documents. I told myself I needed to take it to someone, an expert, maybe the police, but I hadn't yet. I wasn't sure who to trust. I didn't know what I was even looking at. But I did know one thing: those files weren't supposed to be there. And neither was that VPN client. I hadn't noticed it before, hidden deep in the system tray, buried in startup files. A client I didn't install. It had been routing data through a secure line that didn't trace back to her job. I looked up the IP. It pinged off a server in Europe, one known for hosting privacy masks. The client had last connected 3 weeks ago. Around the same time she'd borrowed the laptop. Around the same time her lies had started to take shape. What exactly had she been accessing? I called a friend of mine from college, Ben. He was a systems analyst for a cybersecurity firm in Portland. We hadn't talked in years, but he still answered like no time had passed. I need a favor, I said. Off the books. He didn't ask questions. Just told me to upload the files through a secure portal he sent me. I did it that night, everything from the drive, the ring receipt, the hotel confirmation, the emails, the internal documents, the strange PDFs. 2 days later, he called me back. Jake, man, where did you get this stuff? I didn't answer. He continued. Some of these files, contractor logs, subcontractor manifests, they're tied to restricted supply chains. Defense-grade material, maybe not full-on classified, but sensitive enough to get attention. I felt my mouth go dry. You're telling me she pulled that data through my laptop? I asked. Ben was quiet for a second. Not just pulled. Forwarded. There are transmission logs. And you were the logged-in user when it happened. I leaned against the kitchen counter, gripping the phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. What does that mean, legally? He hesitated again. It means if someone's looking to trace a breach, your name is already in the chain. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I didn't sleep. I unplugged the laptop and put it in the closet. Not that it mattered. Whatever had been done was already out there. It wasn't just a relationship she sabotaged. She had hijacked my digital identity, my professional reputation, my access. And now I was a name on a breach. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 30 minutes later, the same number texted, "Meet me at 10. Elm Street Cafe. I have answers. Connor, PI." I didn't remember hiring a private investigator. But I did remember an old friend of my brother's, a guy named Connor who'd done security work. I hadn't talked to him in years. Still, I went. The cafe was small, barely more than a coffee counter and 3 booths. Connor was in the last one, his back to the wall. He looked older than I remembered, beard a little thicker, eyes a little more tired. "Jake," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. I didn't know I needed a PI. He tapped a thick manila folder on the table between us. "Didn't hire me. I was sent." "By who?" He slid the folder toward me. "Look inside." I opened it. Inside were printed emails, dozens of them. Dates, names, IP logs, message threads between Elisa and a burner account. The earliest one was dated 5 months ago. "Your wife," Connor said, "was approached by someone posing as a whistleblower. They claimed they needed documentation to expose internal fraud at her company. She believed them or pretended to." He pointed at the emails. "They asked her to collect files. Told her what to look for, what accounts to access. At first, it was small stuff. But then it escalated. She used my credentials," I said. "She used everything," Connor replied. "Your work history, your laptop, your name. The server calls were routed through your user ID. I felt like the walls were closing in. Am I a suspect?" Connor shook his head. "Not yet. But you're a person of interest. If this goes federal, your name's in every log. And the guy she was working with, Michael Porter? He's not who he says he is. His alias is tied to 2 other data breach investigations. So what now?" Connor leaned back. "Now, you prepare. Lawyer up. Document everything. Keep your head down. Don't confront her. Don't talk to him. Stay invisible." He paused, then added, "And wipe your systems. All of them." I nodded, but my mind was somewhere else. Elisa didn't just cheat on me. She didn't just leave me. She used me as a cover. And if she got caught, I was the fall guy. I left the cafe and walked for hours. Through city blocks and alleyways, past storefronts and silent bus stops. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to sit in that empty apartment and wait for someone to knock on my door with a warrant. Everything I'd built, my career, my reputation, my identity, was now collateral damage. And all I could think was, did she ever love me? Or was I always the convenient one? The next morning, I made the call I'd been avoiding. I reached out to one of Elisa's old coworkers, Laura, someone she used to be close with before their falling out last year. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but when I explained what I'd found, her voice dropped. I knew something was wrong, Laura said. Elisa started asking weird questions around the office. She said she was helping a friend with legal stuff, trying to do the right thing. She said you were helping her. I wasn't, I said flatly. Laura sighed. Then she lied to me too. Over the next 20 minutes, Laura walked me through conversations, project names, and dates, all lining up with the documents I had found. Elisa had used her role to access protected data, masked it through my accounts, and handed it off to an outside contact she believed was an advocate for whistleblower protection. But they weren't exposing fraud. They were targeting a gray zone logistics contract connected to a defense supply chain. The company was private, but some of the names on the files were flagged in databases only federal agencies could see. Elisa didn't know the full extent, but she knew enough to be dangerous. That night, Connor called again. You've been flagged in a preliminary audit, he said. It's not public, but it's serious. The only reason no one's knocking on your door yet is because someone in the background is buying you time. Elisa? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Yeah, I think she gave them everything, including you. A week later, I saw her again for the last time. It was a lawyer's office, neutral ground. She walked in looking thinner, older somehow, but still composed. She sat across from me with her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes flicking toward mine only once before dropping to the floor. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know it would go that far. I didn't answer. She continued slowly. I gave them everything. The laptop, the logs, the receipts. I told them it was me. That you didn't know. That you never had access to the project files. And they believed you? I asked. They're putting me in witness protection. She said it like it was a punishment. Like she hadn't engineered every step of it. I sat there in silence, letting it settle. My legal record was clear. She'd made sure of that. But my name would forever be linked to the breach in some file, somewhere. I wasn't going to prison, but I'd never work in that industry again. Not with that kind of red flag. There was no apology she could give. No explanation that would make it make sense. She'd used me emotionally. Then professionally. And when it all came crashing down, she left me to carry the aftermath while she disappeared into a government-sanctioned clean slate. I didn't stop you, I said finally. That's what gets me. I saw it happening and I let it play out. You couldn't have known, she whispered. But I did. I just didn't want to believe it. The meeting ended without ceremony. She left through one door. I left through another. 3 months passed. I found a new job, lower pay, fewer responsibilities, but peaceful. I rented a smaller apartment near a trail system and started running again. I cut off anyone who knew both of us. Then, one morning, a plain envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed in courier font. 2 lines. Thank you for not stopping me from falling. I hope you managed to rise on your own. There was no signature. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I slid the letter into a drawer and went for a run, finally free of the echo of her footsteps.